every time I see a wallaby, right, I feel like smacking the nigga with a wallaby.
Pulling out rat and the police knocks right behind him. Those niggas got arrested.
This is political suicide in the music industry.
The stories you're about to hear aren't just legends, they're warnings. Ghostface Killah sits with Fat Joe and Jadakiss and starts pulling threads. Street instincts that never left, industry politics that moved like a machine, and music so guarded it came through a CIA email. We're going to piece together how a kid from Stapleton sharpened a voice that still bites in 2025, why a single chant could freeze an entire radio ecosystem, and how a tropical writing trip turned into an eviction notice before birthing a classic. And we won't make you wait for the stakes. You just saw it. Fans literally pulling out heat during the 50 verses. Kiss era, a stunt that ended in cuffs. You'll hear how Ghost and Ray got kicked out of Barbados mid-album plotting. And when we get to Hot 97, we'll show you exactly why Ghost calls it political suicide, and how a whole network seemed to form Voltron against Wu. Let's start with the music, and why this new Ghost feels like he came to fight. If you know Ghostface, you know he's obsessive about how the music hits. On this run, the first thing that grabs you isn't nostalgia, it's pressure. Joe hears it immediately. Ghost sounds gruffer, meaner, like he's pushing the words through his teeth on purpose. It's less, remember that old feeling, and more, feel this now. There's a reason the rollout felt like a covert op. Even the way people got to hear the album before it dropped sounded like something out of an internal affairs briefing. No loose links, no forwards, no leaks. Phone-only windows where the audio appears and disappears. It's dramatic, but it fits Ghost's ethos. Control the story, or someone else will.
I got it one listen. They sent us a CIA email.
From the jump, Ghost doesn't hide the energy behind it. Sometimes the tone tells you everything. You can hear that in the way he talks about track 1, how he chooses to come in with teeth bared. No cute throwbacks, no easing you in. It's a deliberate first impression. We're not here to play nice.
It was probably, I know the first track I'm aggressive, you know what I mean? But
that aggressiveness isn't cosplay. It's a reflex he earned the hard way. It's the same muscle that gets triggered when labels get political or when radio tries to make an example out of you. The voice sounds heavier because the road got heavier. And every time the music industry tried to sand down those edges, Ghost doubled back to the steel that built him in the first place. You're going to watch that pattern repeat. First with the art. Lock it down so only the trusted can touch it. Then with the attitude. Walk in swinging so nobody doubts where you stand. But to really understand why those moves feel second nature in 2025, you have to go back to the stairwells where Ghost learned the rhythm. Swing first, then talk. We'll get there in a second. First, one more thing about this angry on purpose tone. It's not just optics. When the first voice you hear calls out exactly how he's entering the ring, it gives you permission to expect impact. That's how you set stakes for an album, and that's how you set stakes for a story. Our story. Because the same instincts that made Ghost lock the music behind CIA windows, those are the instincts that told him to poke the bear on stage when radio got slick, and to brace for what came next. Hold that thought. Before there were album rollouts or radio wars, there were hallways where you either learned to fight or got talked to. That's the Staten Island Ghostface is talking about. An environment where bombing was a pastime and breaking even meant you took as much as you gave. You learned how to read a room, how to hold your ground, and how to keep your hands ready. That residue never leaves.
A lot of fights though, a lot of fights. You know, that's where you learn how to fight at.
It doesn't take long before play becomes survival. The way Ghost says it isn't glamorous. It's matter of fact, like he's reading a logbook of dumb decisions and inevitable consequences. That frankness is part of why his voice still cuts. He doesn't dress up the past to make it palatable. He says it how it happened and lets the weight sit.
Robbing and shit, doing all that shit. But you know, it was just on some real life. You know, after a while you get into the drug game and, you know, you start selling your little nicks and dimes.
The escalation is predictable, and he doesn't pretend otherwise. You keep moving, you keep pressing your luck, and sooner or later the island answers back with a cold bus ride and a blue uniform. That rhythm, push, consequence, push again, is the drum pattern under Ghost's entire career. It's the reason his calm sounds like danger.
Moved to Stapleton. But yeah, that's where my base was at in Stapleton. Like most of my years and getting locked up and doing this, going right to Rikers and...
Now take those instincts and put them on a stadium stage. Multiply the noise. Add labels, DJs, sponsors, egos, and 5 different agendas wearing the same logo. If you grew up learning that the only way to be heard is to swing, what do you do when the biggest radio machine in your city turns its back? You've seen the clip we're driving toward. Ghost calling the move political suicide. But here's the twist. The way he and Joe describe what happened after that moment is what makes the story feel bigger than one station and one chant. They talk like radio didn't just cut them off. It's synced up, city by city, like somebody hit a switch, and every outlet suddenly remembered they were on the same team. We'll play you that stretch in a minute. First, we're dropping into a different kind of danger. A reminder that while radio was getting organized, the streets were too. And sometimes, the most reckless people in the room are the ones cheering for you.
They pulling out Rat, and the police knocks right behind them. Them niggas got arrested.
That's Jadakiss, mid-beef, explaining how fan loyalty crosses the line from support to stupid in seconds. It's a moment that underlines everything about this era. The stakes weren't theoretical. The energy rappers put on wax came back to meet them in parking lots. That's the world Ghostface is navigating while he's building classics. And that's the world where a single on-stage decision can cost you years of airplay. Next up, the moment where radio formed Voltron, why Ghost calls it political suicide, and how a writing trip to paradise turned into security escorting Ray and Ghost out the front door.
This is political suicide in the music industry.
When Ghost calls it political suicide, he's not talking about a bad tweet or a cold shoulder. He's talking about breaking an unwritten law in front of a stadium, drawing a line with the biggest station in the city, and daring everyone watching to pick a side. What makes this more than a hot-headed moment is what he and Joe say happened next. It didn't feel like one station punishing a rapper. It felt like an entire grid syncing up.
Stations is whack. It's like, but against y'all, they formed Voltron.
That's the word Ghost uses, Voltron. Not a DJ beef, not one PD slipping records down the playlist, a formation. And the way he lays it out, the dominoes didn't stop at a single borough. Stations align, phones ring, doors shut. Suddenly you're not arguing for spins, you're arguing for oxygen.
But one thing that taught me, right? Because all these radio stations, they make you believe they are enemies. Yo,
down.
Come here, this is the new power. Yo, the mother stations is whack. It's like the enemies of the enemies is like, nah, we ain't playing it. And they basically, the whole country was like a domino effect.
There's a reason this hits so hard in the story we're telling. You've already heard how Ghost treats his music. Locked windows, controlled access, no leaks, no mercy. So when the industry starts doing the same thing back, locking doors, controlling narratives, no mercy, he recognizes the move. The difference is, he can't out-encrypt a frequency. All he can do is lean into the fight.
Yeah, it was deep. It was deep. I think that was the time when it was just like, yo, y'all was up so much. Like, y'all, everything bad boy. And it was like, yo, we was just so down here.
The frustration in Joe's voice and the way Ghost leaves certain names implied instead of spoken tells you everything. There are rooms you can't barge into. There are conversations you're never invited to. That's the power of a formation. You're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with a shape, and the shape moves fast. One chant becomes a cautionary tale. One night becomes a memo. One group becomes an example. If you're Wu-Tang, the group that was too raw, too loud, too together, the machine doesn't argue with you. It organizes around you.
It wasn't really like consistent on how we had it at the top. So that's how that shit started like simmering down. But we left Rage Against the Machine.
There's a tiny, almost throwaway detail that lands like a riddle. Ghost mentions reaching out, trying to smooth it over, only to be told the person he needed was already on a plane to France. It's not the destination that matters, it's the message. We're not talking.
Yeah, the program, I talked to her, this and that and the third. She wanted to go out. She wanted to go to France. Man, I'm
France.
Yeah.
So how do you respond when the hallways go quiet? If you're Ghostface, you double down on what you control. Your pen, your circle, your instincts. Which is how we get to the next chapter of this war story, where fans try to prove their loyalty with something dumber than a radio blacklist. A gun in the air.
Dudes got arrested doing that to me. when I was going at it with 50.
This is where support stops being a word and becomes a booking number. It's one thing to scream for your favorite rapper in a parking lot. It's another to brandish something in a traffic lane because a famous face pulled up at a light. The result isn't a salute, it's a sentence.
They pulling out rat, and the police knocks right behind them. Them niggas got arrested.
There's an ugly symmetry to this moment. In the industry world, a formation moves against you and your records disappear. In the street world, a bad impulse moves for you and your fans disappear. Either way, energy comes back with a cost. Kiss lays it out like a caution sign. The myth of doing it for the culture doesn't cover your court date. And Joe, who's been watching promoters and hangers-on try to impress artists since the CD era, doesn't romanticize it either. The further you get into this life, the more you want distance. From the bravado, from the foolish, look at me, reveals. From the strangers who think showing you something illegal is a way to earn a handshake.
Promoter, they took me to a house and it was so much kilos of cocaine and guns in this house. It was like, yeah, Joey crack. They showing me all this. I'm like, yo, bro, I want to be so far away from these dudes.
Hold that thought, because it ties to what comes next. If the streets can swallow you for trying to impress, the industry can choke you for refusing to bow. And in the mid-90s, right as Ray and Ghost were plotting a mafioso classic, the universe sent a reminder that even paradise has bouncers. It's hard to imagine a more hip-hop cinema scene than Raekwon and Ghostface flying to a luxury island with a stack of RZA beats, combat fatigues in the suitcase, and a plan to write a movie on wax. It sounds like a flex. It plays like a setup.
Comfortable. We got kicked out of Barbados in the midst of that.
The way Ghost tells it, Barbados wasn't a vibe mismatch. It was a cultural collision. Two Staten Island generals walking into a 5-star brochure and refusing to turn down the woo. You can see the front desk grimace. You can hear the complaint calls before they're made. And you can practically feel security approaching the door with that corporate smile that means, sir, we're going to have to ask you to
inflate. It's called the Royal Pavilion. The name was already sounding fly. The brochure looked to fly. Boom. He like, bet.
By day 3, the fantasy turns into a flight. Not a canceled session, a change of country, but it's Ghost and Ray. You don't slow them down by moving the goalposts. You just change the backdrop of the scene. Because the next stop isn't a downgrade. It's Miami in its most cinematic form.
Miami, Scarface. It was all Scarface there. You got bricks. Just finding bricks right across the street on the water and shit. Popping up, 500,000 here and there.
If Barbados was the polite no, Miami is the loud say less. The Pelican Hotel becomes a writing bunker. Bottles sweating on the table, windows catching the South Beach glare, pages filling with codes and colors, and crime movie staging. It's not just location, it's texture. You can hear the humidity in those verses. You can smell the ocean in the ad-libs.
You know what I mean? It was just, it was Scarface. And that's how them darts came out.
Yeah.
Boom, darts every day. Bow. I remember we had Bex and Heineken's just drinking mad of them shits. I forgot what hotel we forgot the name. The Pelican Hotel, right up in there like that. Yo, that's where we jotted all that shit down. Yeah, everything. Then we came back. We just wrote everything.
Yeah.
Came back
and laid it
down. You know what?
Yeah.
This is the engine of Ghostface's storytelling. Take a setback, change the city, sharpen the pen. Get bounced from a resort? Cool. Write a classic by the water. Get frozen by radio? Cool. Turn your delivery into armor and smuggle your album through CIA emails. It's the same philosophy in different costumes. Force the world to feel you, even if it has to do it on your terms. And that brings us back to the present tense, because the way Supreme Clientele 2 moves isn't an accident. It's a response. It's a decision. It's Ghostface, older and rougher, picking the pieces of his legend that still cut and building the album around edge instead of echo. Up next, how Ghost uses skits like weapons, why the pause generation pushed him to make a joke out of a pet peeve, and what it sounds like when a whole clan forms Voltron for the cause instead of against it. Ghost has always treated skits like weapons, not filler, but framing. They set tempo, slice tension, and remind you who's driving. On this run, he turns a generational pet peeve into a laugh and a warning at the same time. The room is younger now, the slang is different, and in the middle of a take, A kid at the board starts policing the language, stopping in cold with that one word Ghost can't stand mid-flow.
Because I'm in the studio one day, right? First of all, I'm hearing pause all day. Like, I'm just talking, I'm like, yo. Yeah, it's a pause. I'm in there like...
What do you do when the new rules keep interrupting the old rhythm? If you're Ghostface, you don't argue. You immortalize it. You turn the annoyance into a bit, the bit into a skit, and the skit into a mirror for the whole conversation between eras. Not to fix anyone's slang, but to plant a flag. Don't break the spell when the pen is moving.
I'm like, yo, you taking me out of my element.
Yeah.
Like, yo, but I know what the I mean, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, why? So, we did a skit on it.
That's the larger philosophy of this album. Defend the element. Lock the playback behind CIA emails. Announce the first track as aggressive on purpose. Cut the jokes in your voice, not someone else's. Even the sequencing feels like a statement. The way the hard edges wrap around the humor so the humor snaps harder. Ghost is always written like he's directing. Here he edits too, making sure no one gets to decide where the punchlines land. And it's not just him. You can hear family energy in the DNA, that woo shorthand that shows up when it's time to make a point. The same crew that turned park bench slang into platinum hooks still knows how to crowd a mic without stepping on each other's toes. That's why the interludes work. They don't distract from the verses, they co-sign them. Skits become punctuation marks after the threats, smirks after the flexes, little car doors slamming shut before the beat drops again. There's a reason the voice sounds gravelly now. Some of it's time, some of it's choice, but mostly it's context. When you're telling stories about radio forming up like a robot, about fans catching bids during beef, about getting walked out of a luxury hotel in paradise, you don't whisper. You throw your shoulders forward and lean into the consonants. That's what we mean by mean on purpose. It isn't cosplay, it's posture. We're on the home stretch. One last twist of the knife before we close. You heard Ghost talk about radio forming Voltron against Wu. Now listen to the same word when he flips it, when the clan forms Voltron for the cause and turns a room electric.
When we come together for the cause.
Form Voltron.
Yeah.
That's the part the machine can't replicate. Formation without soul is just policy. Formation with history is a surge. Put those 9 letters on a marquee. Pack the floor with people who grew up on scratched CD copies and bootleg tees. And you don't need an algorithm to tell you what happens next.
That
right
shit
now.
The garden was magnifying. It was incredible. It was electrifying.
That's the city shaking hands with its future and its memory at the same time. It's what happens when you live long enough to watch a band turn into a badge, a myth turn into momentum. Radio can gatekeep a spin. It can't gatekeep that roar.
Like this year, I felt more comfortable with the shows that we did. I felt like these days, this tour we just left was the best that we ever did in our life. Right now.
There's a quiet lesson inside the flex. The thing that got them iced, the refusal to shrink, is the thing that keeps the rooms full decades later. That's why Ghost's stories land even when he barely raises his voice. He doesn't need to over-explain the Summer Jam fallout or name every hallway where the calls got made. He just has to remind you, we felt it. And when the clan stands shoulder to shoulder, you feel it too. So the question isn't whether a formation happened back then. The question is how high those calls went, how many hands it took to twist the dial, and whether it even matters now that the dial is in the crowd's hands. That's the knife he leaves in the table. The machine can organize, but it can't organize you once the music hits. Which brings us to the last word. And it's not really a word at all. It's a cadence. A way Ghost ends his chapters with a smirk, a warning, and a memory that might get you smacked with a wallaby if you forget yourself. He came up in stairwells where your voice didn't travel unless your knuckles did. He carried that lesson into boardrooms that pretended not to hear him, onto stages where the wrong 3 words could get a city's antennas turned the other way. He wrote through a hotel eviction and doubled down behind encrypted links, laughing at a pause while he sharpened the blade. And he's still here, gruffer, funnier, meaner, telling you what it costs and why it's worth it. If 1997 was a dare to the machine, 2025 is the invoice. You don't have to like the delivery. You just have to feel it.
Every time I see a wallaby, I feel like smacking the with a wallaby. when we come together for the cause.
Form Voltron.
Yeah.
Now decide for yourself. When the machine formed up, did it make them smaller or make this louder?